the issue of same-sex marriage being wrong, right? It got mentioned about the redefinition, of marriage equality. But this is something that, culturally, it almost seems like it's a done deal, that everybody's decided, okay, well, yeah, same-sex marriage. Doesn't matter who you want to be with. Love is love. Marry whoever you want. And so, let's throw the question out there. Make sure that this video could possibly get banned or never monetized if I ever wanted to.
Speaking of cancel culture.
Yeah, there we go.
How was it framed? I didn't see it.
What's that?
How was the question framed? I didn't see it.
I'm just trying to remember, because I just in passing was watching, because there was a conversation between two other people about.
Yeah, actually, I could. Yeah, I guess I could throw this out as a plug, because I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Ryan Anderson, Robert P. George, and Christopher Tollefson, but they actually just released another version of a book they wrote called "What Is Marriage? Man and Woman: A Defense," in which the three of them, who are very, very smart conservative thinkers, wrote a defense of natural marriage, which is marriage between just one man and one woman. They don't use religion; they use completely secular reasoning, and they also use some legal arguments as well to defend the position that marriage is only between one man and one woman. And so they just released it's not an updated version or a second edition, because it's basically the same version as the version they released before. It does come with a new postword, I guess you could call it, written by the four of them. It's only like 4 pages long. So if you already own the first one, might not be worth picking up a second, the newer one for just that alone. It's just them talking about kind of what's been going on since the first one was published. But essentially, yeah, I could take us through real quick the moral reasoning for natural marriage if we have time for that.
Yeah, if you want to just.
Okay, because I noticed someone saying that our reasoning would probably be along the lines that it violates God's law or something, and there is that aspect of it where homosexual acts, not homosexuality itself, because obviously just being attracted to someone isn't a sin. It's what you do with that attraction that makes it a sin. So homosexual acts are forbidden in Scripture, and there are several places in Scripture, even from the mouth of Jesus himself, which states that marriage is just between one man and one woman. Jesus said, have you not read that in the beginning God created the male and female, and for this reason you'll leave your father and mother, be joined to your wife, and that kind of thing. So it does violate God's law, but we can also argue, without even appealing to religion, that marriage is between one man and one woman. And the reason for that is because what is the purpose of sex? Well, the purpose of sex is procreation. And that's because if two people, a man and a woman, engage in sexual intercourse, then there, of course, it is the way that pregnancy happens. That's the way that the human species is procreated, is through male and female sexual reproduction. Male and male sexual encounters don't have that. Female sexual encounters don't have that. But male and female sexual encounters do have that. That's what's unique about the male and the female, is their ability to procreate. And so the reason we have marriage is because that helps regulate the male and female sexual relationships, because a woman can only get pregnant once, and then for 9 months she has the baby, and then she can get pregnant again after that. But a man, if he has sex with multiple women, can get multiple women pregnant and sire multiple children. And so this is a way to sort of ensure that a man is domesticated and isn't going around making multiple women pregnant. And now we also see that in the marriage vows, that marriage is we have an expectation of exclusivity, where there's only one partner in each marriage, and permanence, where we say you take the woman and the man takes each other to have in sickness and health, and for better or worse, richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live, till death do you part. So there's also an expectation of permanence. And so the only reason we would expect exclusivity and permanence is if marriage has a special tie to children. And so that because marriage, aside from domesticating the man, also provides a stable environment in which to raise children. And so that's why we would say that marriage is not just what two people do when they love each other, because obviously brothers and sisters love each other, mothers and sons love each other, friends can love each other, but just because they love each other, that doesn't necessarily make a marriage. So what's unique about the male and female sexual relationship is that it has the possibility of children. In fact, the male and female sexual relationship is the only relationship on earth that's actually enhanced by children, not hindered by the presence of children. So we would say that marriage then is not, there is an element of love, because obviously the husband and wife should love each other, but marriage for love is actually a fairly recent invention. Before the 20th century, marriages were essentially uh, chosen by the parents. The children didn't really have a say in it. It was there's a word for it. I'm blanking on the word, but essentially, they were the marriage couple were essentially chosen by the parents. And so marriage for love is actually a fairly recent invention, because while love should be present, that's not the key thing for a marriage relationship. It's that sexual relationship which causes children. So we would say that a marriage then is a comprehensive union with a special link to children. It has that special link to children because of the male female sexual component. And it's a comprehensive relationship because the man and the woman, because they can sire children, uh, they form their lives around each other and around the possibility of children. And so the whole possibility of children means that the male and female must now orient their lives around the possibility of having children, because that's what male and female sex does. Um, and so, in a very real sense, the man and the woman become one flesh, and that's not just a metaphorical way to describe the sexual relationship, but it's actually very much a physical reality. Because for one person, any of your bodily systems, such as your respiration system, your digestive system, all of these systems can be just done by one person. But the reproductive system is unique in that it requires two people in order to function as it's meant to function. That's the man and the woman. It requires those two. So when they act in concert by having sex, they are literally becoming one flesh, because now the male reproductive part and the female reproductive part are now working in tandem in a way that it's supposed to, whether it's designed by God or it was adapted by nature. Either way, it's the only one of our bodily systems that requires two people. So in a very real sense, the man and the woman become one flesh. So this is why we would say then that that marriage has a special arranged marriage. Thank you, Carla. So this is why we would say that that the marriage relationship has this special link to children, is because of the sexual component. And this sexual component then is missing from two men and two women. So not only is marriage not needed, because there's no possibility that the two will create children by their sexual union, but it also just doesn't make a marriage, because if that component to have children is missing, then a marriage can't happen. In fact, the state itself has actually said that if you're not able to have children, like if you're infertile, that is not a reason to annul the marriage, because the male female relationship is still procreative in type, even if the capacity for procreation is blocked by some external factor, disease or injury or something. But the ability to copulate must be there. So if a man is, for example, paralyzed from the waist down and is unable to have sex, the marriage cannot be there's a term for this too. Marriage cannot be
Annulled?
consummated. You cannot consummate the marriage, and so therefore the marriage is not legitimate, and therefore the marriage can be annulled. because of the inability to have sex. So even until very recently, even the state recognized that the capacity to have children is necessary for a marriage. So that's kind of a a little bit complicated. It's not a simple reason for why we would say a marriage is only between one man and one woman, but those are essentially the reasons that we would say that marriage is only between a man and a woman. So there really is no such thing as same-sex marriage. In fact, even in the Obergefell decision, which the Supreme Court legalized, unjustly legalized same-sex marriage across the board in the United States. Even one of the justices who wrote on that said, the concept of same-sex marriage is younger than the iPhone. Uh, for all of human history, marriage has only been seen as between a man and a woman. Even in homosexual affirming cultures like the ancient Greeks, it was still recognized that marriage was only between a man and a woman. So yeah, so those are really the reasons, the philosophical reasons why we would say marriage necessitates a man and a woman.
Yeah, I've even heard some LGBT, activists, saying, "Why are we fighting for marriage? That's something those heterosexual people do. That's not what we're about." So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
the way I would approach it, and that's all some good. The question, why is, why would we say, why do we, affirm that same-sex marriage is wrong? It's not, I think, quite as simple, cut and dry as because it violates God's law. Though that it does. I mean, he flat out says, no, don't do it. But for a lot of the reasons you just went into, that it just so obviously, as a Christian, first of all, this argument wouldn't work with secular people, but as a pastor addressing followers of Christ, God designed the world a certain way, and we should seek to live our lives according to the way that God designed the world. I mean, you read the book of Proverbs, and it has all this stuff about, hey, here's some wise things, here's some unwise things. And it all has to do with, because God designed the world and designed us to work a certain way. And that includes marriage, that includes society, that includes the family, right? The marriage relationship. Human beings are designed to work a certain way. And whenever we function things within God's design, that's the way we're supposed to be doing things. When it comes to the issue of same-sex attraction, same-sex so-called marriage, there are so many worldview assumptions that are built into the issue that before we even get to the argument about marriage and whether or not, male and female, male and male, female, female, whatever, there are already so many foundational assumptions about things, going back to the idea of, marriage for love. I mean, marriage for love, marriage being, for love, that's about 5 minutes old, right? We just thought that up a few decades ago. I remember whenever I was young, I was single. I was talking to an older gentleman about a girl that I liked, and I mentioned something about, being compatible, and I'm not sure we're compatible. And he goes, compatible ain't got nothing to do with it. You just choose to live with them and the compatibility comes about. And it's just this mindset that it's not that you have to feel it right, or it has to, kind of have that first, that you make a commitment and then develop love. But like that doesn't even enter the radar to people who are saying same-sex marriage, they should do it because love is love. And, if you love someone, you should be able to get married. It's like that's the whole view of humanity and human relationships and what marriage could even possibly be about is so foreign. The idea of same-sex marriage to a biblically based worldview, I mean, it's, might as well say the sun is rising in the west. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, and those are really great points too, Mark. Yeah, like you said, this whole concept is kind of foreign because our culture doesn't understand marriage. And, it didn't start with just the legalization of same-sex marriage. It started with the advent of no-fault divorce, that people started to lose sight of what marriage actually is. And it started to be more about love. It started to be more about, if you no longer love your spouse, you should just divorce them for, that's why it's called no fault divorce, because originally the only reasons the state would allow divorce were for things like abandonment or infidelity, and I think there might have been one other. But there were some very strict guidelines that you could only divorce someone under. But now, because of no fault divorce, now there's this idea that if you fall out of love with your spouse, you just divorce them and then find someone new. But like Mark, I reject this concept of compatibility and this concept of soulmates, because Mike didn't say soulmates, so maybe I'm overstepping my bounds there. But I reject the concept of soulmates because excuse me. I think if you find someone that you're sufficiently compatible with, it can feel like you were created for each other. We know that Eve was created for Adam, but I don't know if there's anything in scripture that says that, in any other case, a man was created for a woman was created for a man. I think it's just if you find someone that shares your interests, that you like,
No.
you can consider marrying that person.
No, Clinton, I'm cutting you off.
Oh,
I'm cutting you off. That's the American model view. That's not the biblical model. The biblical model is boom, two together, one male, one female. That's it. Your parents picked them. You don't get the choice of liking them. But I hate the American model. I don't know if you do or not, Clinton, but the American model is so ridiculous. And maybe it's the one that's opened the can of worms for all these things anyway. It started the nth degree slope.
So that's not really what I was saying. I was saying that if you find someone like that, it can feel like you're made for each other. But I don't think that you necessarily were, because I think that any two people can make a marriage work, but you have to be willing to make it work, and you have to be willing to abide by the vows that you give. No fault divorce. You're essentially not living up to the vows that you made during the marriage ceremony. So I think any two people can make a marriage work, but it requires work. It's not just something where you fall in love with each other and then that's all you need to make a successful marriage. That's not all you need. And that's why the divorce rate is so high. It's because people have lost sight of what it actually takes to make a successful marriage. And that's one of my kind of concerns too, is that successful marriages don't really run in my family, so I'm a little nervous myself to pursue marriage because of that. But I've done a lot of reading on it, so I think I understand well, based on what other really smart people have written about marriage. I think I have a pretty good understanding of marriage and how to have a successful one. But of course, there are a lot of things that you can't read in a book that go into making a successful marriage too. So I still always have those reservations as well.
Okay, Patrick, anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I might be the dissenting voice, not in if homosexual marriage or gay marriage is okay, but I think love is very central to marriage. I think this idea that marriage by God is a medieval concept of parents choosing, I don't know that was godly. I think when you read the story of Boaz, you see a man who deeply loved a woman. I think when you read the story of Joseph and Mary, and Joseph was going to quietly let her go, and an angel came and said, no, stay with her. And then he not only took Mary in, but took a pregnant teenager woman in who was against culture, and then took her to Egypt and took her to Israel and guarded and watched over this family. I think that's deeply love. I think the issue for us is what Mark mentioned earlier, where we have this love is love mentality, and we don't define what love is. And the definition I use is that love is willing the good of the other. Love is not an emotional, flowers, butterflies, everything is good. Marriage is hard. Love is hard, though. The cross was not easy, but Christ did it for love. The early church gave their lives for this good news, the gospel, out of love. Paul, 1 Corinthians 13, it's read at every stinking wedding that I've ever been to almost. It's love. I think love is very central. And just to flippantly say, well, love doesn't matter, I think, well, God is love. And I think God deeply matters in a marriage. I think love deeply matters. I think we have to redefine what we mean by love. And love is look, when tough times come, you stick it through because you made a vow and it's a sacramental thing. When tough times come and your wife gets sick or you get sick or this and that, I think that is love. And I guess to the issue of why it's wrong, and this definition of love is because we haven't done a very good job of defining what love is. And I like that definition of willing the good of the other because it covers a lot of things. So like an alcoholic, I'm not going to say, well, he was born an alcoholic. It's been known that that's genetics. Drug abusers, that's been known that that's genetics. Because I'm a Christian and I want to will the good of that other, I'm still going to step out and go, man, we got to get some help. That's not right. And I think that we get cornered into this philosophical argument too easily, where it's like, we should start with the definitions we know. And the definition we know is that God is love. And out of that came marriage. Out of God's love came creation. Out of God's love came Eve being created for Adam, who I would argue is the climax of creation. She's the only created being that is not created from dirt. She's created from the image of God and the breath of God. Adam was even created from dirt. And so it only makes sense then that who gives birth to the images of God? Women. So I like the talk of children and stuff, because we're in a culture where children have been so devalued and family has been so devalued, where now pregnancy and stuff looks like it's a burden, and it's not. It's like, man, that's the greatest thing that God gives us. Two become one isn't just a sexual act. Two become one, and creating one person is the greatest example of two becoming one. And I think it's okay to say everything that y'all said about God's law and moral laws. I mean, that's all good. It's all great arguments. But I do think that we shouldn't get away from love. I think that we should hammer down on love and say, look, no, man, Christianity is love. God is love. And at the center of marriage is love. But this is what love looks like. Love isn't flowery and just first dates and kisses, and it's morning breath, it's bad houses, it's argument, it's financial stress, it's sickness, it's health. It's all those things we say in our vow, but it's you sticking through it. That's what love is. Just how Christ sticks with us through our good times and bad times. Why? Because he loves us. Not just because he died on the cross, but because he has a deep, profound love for us. And it's that deep, profound love for us as a husband, all of us are men as husbands, that we should then try to reflect to our wives a deep, profound love for our wife that says, through it all, baby, I'm here. We're going to stay together because God is love. That's all I have to add. I'm sort of...
Patrick, I loved everything you just did. It was awesome. Did you ever read the book that said love is a verb? It's an action. Yeah, it's an action. We will our love. And when we will our love, the way you just described it, that's what makes us better.
I agree.
We will our love.
That's a DC talk song.
So don't misunderstand.
It's a DC talk.
So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that love is unimportant. I'm just saying that that it's not the central thing of marriage. And when I say love, I'm talking about that warm fuzzy feeling that you get, because obviously that goes away at times. I agree with your definition of love, that it's to will the good of the other. And so you can make a marriage if you have that kind of love, whether or not you have these warm fuzzy feelings. And so I'm not saying that it's unimportant, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't love the person that you marry. But we can also look at other examples in Scripture, like I believe it was Hosea, who God said, "Look, I want you to go marry a prostitute." So you can make a marriage work even if you don't necessarily choose the person that you want to marry. And so this whole idea of marriage for love is a recent invention. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't love the person you marry. It just means that society has taken a different view of what marriage is, and has slowly eroded it through things like no-fault divorce and the advent of same-sex marriage. That's really what I was saying. And primarily what I was doing is I was trying to give a non-religious argument for same-sex marriage, because obviously there are religious things we could talk about, like that marriage is a reflection of Christ's relationship with the church. So there are a lot of religious things that we could talk about too. I was just giving a strictly philosophical defense of natural marriage because a lot of times when we talk to people, they don't ordinarily take Scripture as a source of authority that they agree with. So I was primarily just giving a philosophical defense there. There are a lot of theological things we could talk about, and I definitely agree with what you said about love too. So that's all I was really just saying, was all. So
glory to you, King of all days. Glory to you in the highest place.